say this clearly before anything else. I wasn't supposed to survive living in that house.
Night shiny.
I moved in last April, a small 2-story rental in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing fancy. I chose it because it was cheap, close to work, and the landlord seemed desperate to find a tenant fast. Maybe that should have been the first red flag. The first night, I heard footsteps above my bedroom. Not loud, just a slow, dragging shuffle. I told myself it was the house settling, or maybe squirrels in the attic, but the next night I heard them again at 2:14 a.m., then at 3:03, then at 4:27, always walking, always pacing. What bothered me wasn't the sound itself, it was the pattern, like someone was thinking, moving, choosing where to step. I told myself it was nothing, I'd just moved in. New houses make new sounds, but then things started disappearing. My phone charger, the food I left on the counter, a shirt, a screwdriver, small things, always small, just enough to make me doubt myself. And then something happened that made doubt impossible. One morning, I found my coffee mug on the opposite counter, filled, fresh, still warm. I live alone. For the first time, the silence in the house felt aware, like something was listening. The morning after I found the warm coffee mug, I decided to check the attic. Not because I was brave, because I was terrified, and I needed a reason to tell myself nothing was wrong. The attic entrance was in the hallway ceiling, a simple wooden square with a pull-down rope. I'd never opened it before. When I walked into the hallway, I froze. The attic door was already open, not fully, just a few inches, enough to see the darkness behind it, like a mouth waiting to swallow anything that got too close. I hadn't touched it. I knew that for a fact. My heartbeat was loud enough that I could feel it in my eyes. I stood there for a long minute, barely breathing, listening for any sign of movement above me. Nothing. But the silence wasn't comforting. It felt like a held breath, the kind people make when they're trying not to be heard. I closed the attic door as quietly as I could, forcing my shaking hands to obey me. And for a few days, things stopped happening. No missing items, no footsteps, no sounds at night. I convinced myself I had imagined everything, that I was just stressed, that the open attic door was just loose or something, until one evening, when I came home from work, walked into my bedroom, and found my closet door open, wide open, all my clothes pushed aside, and on the floor, a folded blanket, not mine. It smelled like sweat and something sour, like someone had been sleeping on it for a long time. I backed out of the room slowly. My throat was closing up. My hands were shaking so violently that I couldn't even open my phone. I called my friend Mark, told him I needed him to come over, that something was wrong, that I wasn't imagining it. He arrived in 10 minutes, brought a flashlight and a baseball bat. "Okay," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "If someone's up there, we'll see them." We reached the hallway. He pulled the attic door down, and as he aimed the flashlight inside, I heard the sound that still wakes me up at night, a fast, desperate scurrying, like hands and knees moving across wood, trying to hide or retreat or escape. Mark looked at me, his face drained of color. "There's someone up there." Mark went up first. I didn't want him to. I begged him not to, but he climbed the ladder anyway, flashlight clenched in one hand, the bat in the other. When his head disappeared into the darkness, I felt something inside me collapse. I kept whispering his name, telling him to answer, to say something. He didn't, not for a full 10 seconds. Then his voice came down, low and shaking. "You need to see this." I climbed the ladder, forcing each step even though my legs felt like wet paper. The moment my head rose above the opening, the smell hit me. Sweat, rotten food, dirty clothes, human breath. The attic wasn't empty. There were piles, organized piles, a stack of my missing shirts, my long-lost screwdriver, food wrappers I never bought, a half-empty water bottle with bite marks on the cap, my missing charger still plugged into an old extension cord, and in the corner, a nest made of blankets, newspaper, cardboard, clothes that weren't mine, and next to it, on the floor, lined up perfectly in a row, 4 photographs, faces, strangers, all looking into the camera with stiff, uneasy expressions. On the back of each photo, scribbled in shaking handwriting, "He left. He stopped coming. They took him. This place was ours." Mark whispered, "What the hell is this?" But I knew. I didn't know how, but I knew. The person living in my attic wasn't hiding from me. He was waiting for someone else. Someone who used to live here. Someone who he believed was still supposed to be here. Mark nudged the pile of blankets with his foot, and that's when we heard it. A man's voice, soft, raspy. From the far corner of the attic, behind 2 boxes. "You're in my room." Mark swung the flashlight. The beam hit skin. A man, thin, filthy, wide-eyed, was crouched low behind the boxes, staring at us without blinking. He whispered again, "You're in my room. You shouldn't be in my room." He wasn't angry. He wasn't surprised. He was confused, like a child waking up from a dream and finding a stranger in his bed. Mark raised the bat, but the man didn't move. He just looked at me and asked, almost pleading, "Where's the woman who lived here? Where is she? She said I could stay. She said she'd come back. She said this house was ours." My mouth went dry. The landlord had mentioned something once, offhand, casual, about the woman who lived here before me, how she moved away suddenly, how she didn't finish clearing out the place. The man stood slowly, his eyes locked on mine. "Why are you here? Why are you in her room? Why are you pretending this is your house?" Mark grabbed my arm. "Get down, now." We climbed out as the man moved toward us, still whispering, "This house isn't yours. You don't live here. You don't." I jumped off the ladder just as his hand reached the attic opening. Mark slammed the door shut, and we ran. We waited outside, on the curb, until the police arrived. I couldn't stop shaking. Mark kept pacing in circles, whispering, "I knew we shouldn't have gone up. I knew it." 2 officers went inside. They were calm, too calm, like they thought we were overreacting. But when they pulled down the attic door and climbed up, they didn't stay calm for long. Within a minute, I heard one of them say, "Oh, Jesus Christ, there's a whole living setup here." They didn't find the man right away. He had slipped deeper into the insulation, into a narrow part of the attic crawl space. They dragged him out only after he tried to hide behind the ventilation pipes. I saw him as they escorted him down the ladder, barefoot, filthy, thin enough to see his ribs, eyes wide open, unblinking, fixed on me. He said nothing, but the look he gave me was worse than anything he could have said. It wasn't anger. It was disappointment, like I had betrayed him. 2 hours later, inside my kitchen, one of the officers sat down across from me. "Do you want the truth?" he asked. I nodded. "The man in your attic, he's been reported before, not for violence, but for trespassing, and for believing places belong to him." "Believing," the officer sighed. "He lived here years ago with a woman. She was the tenant at the time. They weren't related. She let him stay with her for a while when he had nowhere else to go. But at some point, she kicked him out, and he didn't handle it well." My stomach twisted. "What happened to her?" "She moved out suddenly," he said. "Fast, left half her belongings behind. She told the landlord she didn't feel safe anymore." I swallowed hard. "How long has he been in my attic?" The officer hesitated. "You won't like this. Tell me." "We found food wrappers from at least 6 months ago, some older. He was here long before you moved in." My breath caught in my throat. "He wasn't hiding from you," the officer continued. "He was living his life up there, quietly, constantly waiting for her to come back." "And me?" I asked. "You were the intruder in his mind. In his version of reality, you came into the place that belonged to him and the woman." I felt cold down to the bone. "He thought you were pretending," the officer said, "that you were trying to take her spot, that you were acting like this house was yours." I didn't know what to say. "He never intended to hurt you," the officer added. "He just couldn't understand why you were here." The police let me return inside to grab essentials so I could stay elsewhere for the night. As I walked into my bedroom, something caught my eye. My closet door. It was open again. Inside, on the floor, folded perfectly, was my shirt. A shirt I hadn't touched in days. A shirt I thought I'd lost before Mark came over. But that wasn't the worst part. On top of the shirt was a small, handwritten note, shaky letters on a torn scrap of paper. I'll stay quiet now, but when she comes back, you need to be gone.
These stories are too real not to be true. See you in new scary stories.